Hello, little bitches. Welcome back to And World Peace. I am your host, Maggie Gehlsen-Burnett. I am so excited for today's guest. We had just a ball gabbing with one another, but before we get into today's episode, I want to insert a very shameless plug right here for my online boutique. It's called Fuck Girl the Label. You can find out more about it. It's fckgirllabel.com. Find out more on our website. But we just relaunched a few weeks back, so I'm shamelessly plugging it on every single podcast episode. It is basically the sister boutique to this podcast. So you can find a lot of fun little, wearables on our website. We have hats, we have sweatshirts, we have t-shirts, all the things. So be sure to check that out. I will leave the link in the show notes. Today we have my lovely friend, Savannah Necker-Levesque, joining us. And I want to give kind of my brief intro to Savannah, or rather how I know Savannah, and then I will tell you all about her, and then you can listen to us just gab each other's fucking ears off. So a little bit about Savannah and I and how we know each other. So I actually grew up with Savannah. I have known her literally my whole life. You may remember that her sister Allie joined us a few episodes back on the show. Allie, Savannah, and I actually all grew up dancing and baton twirling together. And because we were in, literally like the armpit of Iowa, this like dinky small town, we all went to the same Catholic grade school, which was just a blast and a half. But in all seriousness, Savannah, Allie, and I had some amazing times growing up in just the world of baton twirling. We were on the same competitive baton twirling team, which was super fun. We got to do a bunch of cool stuff together in our formative years. So I just have really fond memories of hanging out with the Necker girls growing up. A quick little tidbit is that so Allie, Savannah, and myself all ended up starting pageants. It was just, again, it was sort of like the thing that you did when you were at our baton and dance studio. You just sort of like got involved in pageantry. And so we all did it. And eventually in 2012, Savannah went on to win Miss Iowa's Outstanding Teen, and I was her first runner-up that year. So we had a really special kind of, time being on the stage together in those last few moments before she was crowned. And I remember that very fondly. I'm sure I was not very fond of it in the moment, but I look back on that super fondly now as an adult. And, I have touched on this before, that when you are a first runner-up to any title, literally it could be, I was first runner-up to Junior Miss Iowa. I was super young then. It could be any title. But when you're first runner-up, the best thing that you can hope for is that you are first runner-up to somebody who you really love and admire and cherish and have a good relationship with, and somebody who basically is just not a fucking asshole. And Savannah is amazing. So I was really fortunate to have that luxury of being first runner-up to her. And yeah, it was just a cool moment. So anywho, let me tell you a little bit more about Savannah. Savannah is a graduate of the University of Northern Iowa with a degree in digital media production and performance and a minor in communications. She has hosted numerous events within the Miss Iowa organization, the UNI Dance Marathon live stream event, and the TV show at UNI, which aired on Cedar Falls Cable. She also played an instrumental role in producing ESPN3 games for the UNI Panthers. Like I said, Savannah was a past Miss America organization title holder in 2012 and was also competitive within the Miss USA organization, placing first runner-up to Miss Iowa USA for 3 consecutive years. Yeah, talk about being a first runner-up. I feel you, girl. The sport of baton twirling has taken her all over the globe, performing in the Walt Disney World Parade, the Rome New Year's Day Parade, Nationals, and has earned her a gold medal at the AAU Junior Olympics. She has also modeled for numerous designers and walked at New York Fashion Week in 2018 for designer McDougal. She now works as a social media manager for her husband's family business, QC Deck Hockey, and works alongside her father in their ever-growing jewelry business, Necker's Jewelers, in marketing and sales. She is currently studying to obtain her gemologist degree through the highest gemological institute in America, and just finished her first children's book, Bella, the Best Companion, all about mental health, which I do believe you can find on Amazon. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure that it exists there. So, suffice to say, Savannah has done literally nothing in her life. No, I'm kidding. But anyway, we just had a total blast hanging out together and gabbing and, catching up and talking about all things mental health and how that has related to our time in pageantry and competitive baton twirling and all that good shit. So anyway, without further ado, let's welcome Savannah to the show. Savannah, thank you so much for joining me. I'm super
Yeah,
excited
hate
about
it.
this. So, I like to start off with basically the same question for everybody. And this question sort of stemmed from my experience in pageantry and how that sort of bled into my like quote adult life. And I suspect that this may feel similar for you. So,
Most likely.
so that's totally great if it does. If not, if there's another time in your life, then awesome. But I would love to hear about like your own personal sort of undoing. So like the way I think about it is that like my life is sort of separated into two halves. It's like before I was in pageants
hmm
and during that time and then after I was done. So that undoing, that sort of unlearning, unbecoming, whatever you want to call it, really began after I was done with pageantry. But for a lot
hmm
of people, it happens, in multiple different ways at multiple different times, and especially for women. So I just would love to hear about the first thing that comes to mind for you.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, growing up and being in pageants, my mom and I were just having this conversation the other day, actually, just about like the pressure I think we
Mhm.
faced being in pageants. And,
Yeah.
we kind of had gone back and forth about like if we were to redo things, would I still be in pageants or
Yeah.
would I still have done them? Um, for me personally, and I'm sure you probably feel the same way, it's like we are always very goal oriented, motivated, still
Yeah.
are, but just in
Yeah.
a completely different way growing up. Like we always had to be doing something, whether that was like success academically or being in sports or twirling or whatever. We
Yeah.
always felt like we had to excel and be like this perfect version of ourselves.
Yeah.
I still do struggle with that. I'm not going to lie. I think it's like an ever changing and ever evolving type thing that we kind of go through as just women in general. I think for me, I went through two different phases with pageants. It was obviously after Miss I was outstanding teen and having gone to nationals.
Mhm.
Um, it was a great learning year for me. I think I grew a lot. I was 14 or 15 at the time. It feels like forever ago because it was. But I just remember getting on the plane and being like, I'm good. Like, what? I don't need this anymore.
Yeah, totally.
And then the second time that had happened was obviously after getting first runner up three times in the in the Miss USA organization. And my husband, who is my boyfriend at the time of like 2, 3 years, he goes, "Why are you doing this? Like, just out of curiosity, I'll always support you, but why are you choosing to do this?" And I was like, is always for like the modeling opportunities or the things that you could have gotten out of pageants. My dog and my cat are literally wrestling in the background right now.
I can't.
Um,
You're fine.
Terrible distraction, terrible distraction. And he kind of just said, "Why are you still trying to prove yourself?"
Mm.
And I was kind of angry when he said that at the time, because
Yeah.
you're so involved in it. And then after taking a step back, like a week or two after, I was like, really though, Sab, like, why are we doing this? Like, what's the purpose? And it was to always, I felt like, kind of prove a point to somebody else other than myself.
Totally.
Um, so those were kind of the two like pivotal moments for me. Obviously, I never competed again.
Yeah.
um, I began focusing more on just my career and who I wanted to be. Yeah. And obviously, I think now too, it's like I'm going through this stage right now. It's like you're constantly trying to do things, be the best version of yourself, which is great and grow.
Yeah.
But I was also kind of like at this point where you just want to be comfortable and you just
Yeah.
want to live your life and do the things that make you happy and say the things that you want to say without like repercussions.
Totally.
Um,
Yeah, absolutely.
and so, yeah, I mean, I think honestly, like right now, just being super transparent, I feel like I'm going through that stage again. So,
Yeah, absolutely. That seems to be a common thread amongst a lot of the people I interview is that they're like, "Oh, I'm in the middle of like an undoing right now or like an unbecoming or this really pivotal stage of growth." I find it fascinating that you say that you were just talking to your mom about this, about like if you could do things over, would you have done it the same? Because I think about that a lot as it relates to just like the competitiveness of it all. Like, I mean, it's difficult when you are a competitive person by nature or a goal-oriented person by nature But as you relate it to your life now, I really resonate with that because it almost feels like there's this, it's a never ending like dissatisfaction with
Yeah.
life. Like you're just
Hmm.
never satisfied and you can never
100%.
really like satiate that hunger for something more. Or,
Yeah.
it like in a lot of ways, I think a lot of women who have done pageants before or who really excelled in them, obviously you were first runner up 3 separate times to Miss Iowa USA. So like you clearly very much excelled in them and could have been Miss Iowa USA, could have been Miss USA, whatever. Like, I think the common thread to amongst women like that is that it sort of becomes this question of like, when will it ever be enough? Like,
Hmm.
like, and I don't want to feel like my life was like a waste of potential, like
Hmm.
that's how I feel
100%.
about it a lot is like, I don't want to feel like I've wasted potential, at any
Yeah.
given point. So yeah, it's wild.
No, yeah, I mean, I still feel like I'm going through that. Just like, when will it ever be enough? I'm sure I
Yeah.
drive my husband like crazy. I love him dearly because we're like polar opposites. He's just like comfortable with
Yeah.
life
Yeah.
and like his job and everything. And then I'm always like, okay, like next goal, what are we gonna do as a couple? Which is great, but like he's probably like, can you just shut up? Like, can you just chill for like 5 seconds?
For
And so
sure.
like I am really trying to like take a step back and be like, okay, you also have to enjoy life. Like it
Yeah.
can't always be you have to get through school and you have to be this at work and you have to make this dollar amount and live in this house and drive this car. It's I love manifesting, like I really
Yeah,
do.
for
But then I
sure.
also look at my vision board and I'm like, but I'm like driving myself crazy sometimes with this vision board because it's like
Totally.
your goals still, just in a different form.
Yeah,
Just in a
absolutely.
different form.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I
No,
totally, totally feel you.
that makes total sense. I am the exact same way with Ty. Like he's very much like, let's just, revel in this and enjoy it and like have the time of our lives while we're here. And I'm like, no, but like, hang on. If we could improve though, we should,
Yes, that is
Nothing
so
is
me, Maggie.
the same.
It's something I'm trying to undo,
It
but it is
literally is
hard
the
because, again,
worst.
we have always grown up to be goal oriented. Like, what's the next thing in life?
Yeah.
Like, what are we doing? We have to have a plan, like how to get from point A to point B, always. So, yeah,
Yeah.
I just told my dad this the other day, too. He's like, I'm in a new phase at work, which is exciting. It's fun.
Yeah.
But he's like, this is a good period of growth. And I'm like, I'm done growing for like
Yeah.
5 seconds, Like, can I just breathe? Can I just
Literally.
chill?
Yeah.
But that's us,
Yeah,
always
totally.
ticking.
My
So,
my therapist once challenged me to stop reading self-help books for like this was like a couple of years ago before I got married and she was just like, "Can you maybe stop with like the constant need to improve yourself?" And I'm like, and truly, like, that was before I sort of got into like, book talk and like really reading and like had a Kindle, was reading as like just for sport or like for hobby, versus like reading to improve. And so she was just like, how about we like not read self-help anymore? And I just was like, but what do you like, what am I supposed to do with my time then? Like, I can't not do
yes.
this. So yeah.
And that's always been me too. I mean, like, I'm sure you remember we went to dance nationals in Minnesota. Was that Minnesota? And I
Yeah.
picked up that damn, like, how to be a vegan or
Yeah.
vegetarian book at like 10. I'm still vegetarian to this day. But like, that is how we have always been. It's like, how do we improve? Like, you
Yeah.
know?
I
And I'm
believe
like, I
I
just wish I could pick up a Harry Potter book and sit there and just like chill and read it. But for
100%.
some reason, if it's not improving me, I can't do it, you
Yeah,
know?
I think that same pamphlet made me go vegetarian for like 3 or 4 years.
I'm
And
pretty sure we had like a little competition going. Of course we would.
yeah, literally,
Who can
who can
last
be
the
the best
longest? Who's
vegetarian?
gonna eat wings first? Let's see.
It was definitely me. I went to the University of Alabama and had fried chicken like the first
Well,
thing.
yeah, I mean, you have to. You just have to. That's hilarious.
So I'm curious, just like off the top of my head, this came to me, and I'm just like, selfishly, I let my curiosity get the best of me on this show a
Yeah,
lot.
go for
So I know that, you got married a few years back, and I'm curious to know, as somebody who, eventually you may want a family,
it.
whatever,
Mhm.
I would love to know your thoughts on, like, if you were to hypothetically have a child who was like,
Me
"Mom, I
or
wanna Mom, I wanna do pageants, or I wanna do, like, this incredibly competitive, thing," and they happen to also be a female. I would love to know,
Mhm.
like, your take on that as somebody who's, like, looking back in hindsight sort of at your experience.
It's so hard because I look back at like pageants and there were so many positive things that sprouted from that as well.
Totally.
And so many opportunities. I don't even know what my life would have looked like truthfully without them
Yeah.
because it was like a lot of modeling opportunities came out of that. I was able to twirl and like do all these things that I really did love. And I was able to meet people that were a lot like me at the same time, who were just very goal oriented. And again, my mom literally asked me this the other day when we were driving to Des Moines. And she's like, sometimes I kick myself for kind of like letting you guys do pageants because I think it kind of made you a perfectionist.
Mhm.
And I sat there and I'm like, but you never once brought that up to us. Like, we were the crazy kids that were like, we want to do this. We
Yeah.
have to do this.
Yep.
And mom was always like, but why?
Yeah,
Like, why do you want to
totally.
do this? And she just supported us in that.
Yeah.
And I probably would not have changed a single thing. Like, I think my parents were very great with like explaining just everything to me, supporting me, but like it's not always about winning. I
Yeah.
always had the mentality of sometimes you win and sometimes you learn, and I really do believe that. Um, so if I did have a daughter, which chances and odds are really stacked against me because there are way too many damn boys in this family. I love them all. But I'll probably be getting hit with swords and playing GI Joe instead. Um, I don't know. We'll see what happens when that comes. I feel
Yeah.
like I would be the supportive parent and be like, "That's fine. Do you want to try it? Like, go
Yeah.
for it. I'll be there for you." Um, but it's not like defining who you are.
Yeah, totally.
So
Yeah.
we'll see.
Yeah, I think about that a lot too, is like, you know, I'm sure that our parents were in such a, like, pickle of a situation. Like, I can't imagine it, like, I think about my parents who, like, first of all, like, were already surprised that, like, I existed in the first place. So, like, so it's like they have this daughter at 43 and they're like, "Well, fuck, like, okay." And then that daughter comes to them and is like, "I wanna do baton twirling." And they're like, "Okay." And then she ends up sticking with it. And then, like, a few years in is like, "I wanna do competitive baton twirling." And they're like, "Okay, I mean, I guess." Like, and then a couple years after that, she's like, "I wanna do pageants." And they're like, "I mean, fine."
Yeah,
Like, they
right.
always were totally supportive of it all, and
Mhm. Yeah,
I don't think that any of them, any parent really back then, or us, knew what maybe the repercussions of
right,
some of that stuff could have been, you know?
right.
So I think, like, it was just human nature for them to be like,
Mhm.
"Of course we'll support you, like, duh," because
Right,
this is something you wanna do, and
right.
what do good parents do other than
And
support
I do think like the nature of pageants have changed so much. I mean, just from like when we were teens to now, misses to now, I mean, it's completely different.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I don't know. I feel like I would say yes, but
Mhm. Yeah, totally.
who knows? Just put
Yeah.
all the good vibes out there that like we get one girl. Just like sprinkle that out.
Sometimes I think,
I mean, I love pirates and superheroes, but it would be nice to throw on a tutu or like flip a baton, too. I don't know.
listen, Savannah, sometimes you win and sometimes you learn.
Yeah,
So,
that's exactly. You are so right. You are so right.
so I want to kind of like switch. I think this is a good segue because talking about all this pageantry stuff and talking about like baton twirling and how all of this like competitive shit we were doing as in truly like our formative years. I wanna know, you are very open about your mental health journey, and you have been
Mhm.
for quite a long time, and you even wrote a children's book about it, which I wanna talk about. Um, I'm curious to know how you think, like, some of that stuff impacted you touched on this, obviously, but, like, kind of going more in depth as to how that stuff might have impacted your mental health and sort of
Mhm.
how you learned to deal with it, how you learned to cope, and maybe if that coping has shifted at all since you've, been sort of removed from pageantry for, X amount of years.
Right. Yeah. So I struggled very young with my mental health. I started having anxiety and obsessive compulsive disorder symptoms when I was like 4 years old.
Mm.
Um, which is crazy to think about, that a child can think of all these thoughts and fears, but I did. My parents were very great at navigating that for me. And I'm very, very thankful for them. And I got my diagnosis when I was 8 years old. Um, for me, it's kind of funny because I think that was also around the same time that I actually started competing in pageants.
Mm.
My anxiety is kind of interesting because for some reason it's worse when I'm just with like a small group of people. But for some reason, I could twirl in front of crowds of like 60,000 people and I would be totally fine. Like I'd have nervous jitters,
Yeah.
but I wouldn't have like this anxiety or like super crazy fears.
Yeah.
Um, I think when it came to pageants, I was always pretty good about not comparing myself to others, but like at the same time, you always kind of did,
Yeah.
like it's in your subconscious. So I do think that affected me a little bit. Just like you always wanted to be perfect.
Mm-hmm.
You really did.
Yeah.
Like that was kind of the whole ideology of pageants back then. I felt like you had to be the perfect person at talent and interview, and you had to look a certain way and dress a certain way. And so I'm sure that did impact me in some way. Um, but yeah, I mean, my mental health has always kind of been like a roller coaster ride. There was times when I was perfectly fine, and there was times when I was not.
Mm-hmm.
I think pageants though did kind of give me an escape almost in a way, which is weird. But I
Yeah.
was so focused on something else that I wasn't thinking about everything internally, which probably also did impact me because I was just compressing everything and all my
Yeah.
emotions. And so I think my freshman year of college, obviously, there was a lot of change for me. And so that was like a really hard year for my mental health. That was also the year like I decided I was going to be done with being on medication, which was kind of crazy for me. Um, I just felt like I wanted to try and navigate life without anything. Um, and that was also the time I think it was my last year competing for Miss Iowa USA as well.
Mm.
Um, so it's just always kind of been a roller coaster ride. It's funny thinking back though, it's like, okay, how did that impact me? I
Mm.
don't know if I'll ever really know, but I do
Yeah.
think pageants almost kind of were an outlet for me because baton twirling was an outlet for me. Like I knew when we went into that studio and we were twirling and listening to music, like that made me so happy. Like that was a huge serotonin boost for me. And I think the same thing every single time I stepped on stage, it was kind of the same way. But obviously, all the prep and stuff that went into it was hard, you
Yeah,
know?
for
And
sure.
you always were kind of like, okay, like, is it going to be my year or my.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny you say that your anxiety is a lot worse with small groups of people versus like the being able to perform. And I think that's why like we were such good performers is because like I'm the exact same way. Like my anxiety is always so elevated when I'm with like, a small group of people when
Mhm.
I'm more vulnerable in that
Yeah,
setting.
you're more intimate with people.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like it's crazy to think that yeah, twirling for a screaming crowd of like 100,000 fans at Bryant Denny Stadium like did not phase me in the slightest. But then the
Mhm.
minute that I got around like a group of people, and I was in a small group in a classroom or something like or in a
Yeah.
bio lab, I would like literally have a panic attack. You're like, okay,
Mhm.
sick, love this for me.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Totally.
that's fascinating to me. And I think too that probably is why so many girls like I think it's why they get into something like pageantry or competitive baton twirling is because they have this anxiety, they want an outlet,
Yeah.
and it turns out that that outlet actually ends up like suppressing their emotions even
How they,
more.
yeah, 100%.
Fascinating to me how that all worked for like all of us, for those
Mhm.
of us who have mental health struggles that we deal with, which is probably a good majority. So fascinating.
It is. It really is.
We'll never know the impact
I
of
know.
what happens
If you could
then.
undo it all, it's like,
Yeah,
what would
yeah.
it be like? I don't know if
I
I really want
played
to know
softball.
though. Like, I don't think I would redo anything, but it's like,
No, yeah. Totally. I think about that a lot too. I'm like, you know what? I I think about especially that last year that I competed. I like competing in Miss Iowa. I look back on that a lot and I'm like, I wouldn't have done a single thing differently. Like I
No,
wouldn't have changed my prep at all. I probably would have like been more lax with myself because I was a fucking
100%.
crazy person. But like, but it's like I couldn't have done anything differently and like different panel, different day. Like I know
Yeah.
people say that it's, kind of, stupid, but like it is true. So yeah, that's fascinating. Thanks for sharing that. So
Yeah.
what inspired you then to write the children's book?
Yes. So it's actually been like a work in progress since freshman year of high school
Oh
in
my
Spanish
God.
class. Believe it or not, Maggie, I did do something in Spanish class of
Oh,
importance.
wait, who is your
Crazy.
teacher?
I think it was Senora Park. I want to say, I don't know. I'm pretty sure it had to have been her.
I had her
Um,
too. She hated me so much.
I don't remember anything really from Spanish class other than like,
Same.
where's the bathroom? Where's the library?
Oh my
What's
God.
your name? You know, those kind of things.
That's impressive.
But this book did stem from Senora Parr, so I guess that's a positive. But for me, I've always been a huge animal lover. Um, and as I'm watching my dog drool next to me on the bed, just knocked out. He's so cute. But for me, animals were kind of an outlet for me too.
Mm.
I felt like when I had an animal, I put like so much love and thought and work into them that I kind of wasn't paying attention to my emotions again. Shocker. I just had somebody else that I had to care for.
Mhm.
And so like I had to be okay. And so my puppy Bella, which the story is kind of based around, I received her when I was 10 years old. I had many other animals in my house growing up, but for some reason, I had to have this damn purse puppy to take to baseball games, like Paris Hilton as a 10-year-old.
Right.
That was the vibe that I was going for. And I had begged my parents over and over again. They're like, no, like you're crazy. Well, of course, I fell in love with this little Chihuahua Yorkie. It looked like a bat and begged my parents for her. And she ended up being the biggest blessing to me because, again, thought more about her than I did myself. She was kind of like my little therapy, emotional support puppy. So, yeah, the book started when I was in high school. I pushed it aside for 4 years until I got to my freshman year of college. It was an art class, and we had to come up with a story that was important to us. So, again, I wrote about Bella and my journey with emotional health and just how she kind of helped me along the way. Again, pushed it aside and then revisited a year ago. It was just driving me nuts. I still had it in my notes section on my phone. And I felt like it was just a really important lesson to get out there, really important story. I had always been kind of like a mental health advocate. But I just feel like, and you probably feel the same way, like you just don't have as much time as what you want to be able to invest in something that's super important to you, like
Yeah.
between work, being married, friends, just juggling everything.
Mhm.
I knew I couldn't like go around to schools and tell my story, and I couldn't do all the things that I wanted to do. And so writing this children's book, I felt like was a really good way to kind of get that out there. I've had a really good positive feedback on it. I just went to Bennett School actually and did a little book tour, which was fun. Visited grades, preschool to sixth grade. What was super cool though, and like growing up, we never talked about our mental health. It was something that like if you
Yeah.
did talk about, you were kind of like the weirdo or you
Yeah.
were outcasted. And this negative stigma was always associated with anxiety or OCD. And what was really neat was after reading this story, so many kids raised their hand and said that they had anxiety or they had ADHD or they had OCD. And it was just super neat to see so many kids speaking up about that and it being more normalized in our society today, which is super neat.
Yeah.
There was also one child, he was just fidgeting a lot. He was making snowflakes, and the teacher was like, he has this, this, and this. And I was like, okay, this is impressive as a teacher too, to also notice that one of your students is struggling with their mental health. And this is just something that gets them by. Like they're still
Yeah.
listening to what I'm having to say. but they're doing their own thing at the same time. Because I also think growing up, like if we were fidgeting or we were like drawing little cartoons or something, like we would get in trouble.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
so it was a really refreshing experience. So
Yeah, that's amazing. That's so cool. I love that. I appreciate so much work like that because, yeah, to your point, it's like, as somebody who, I mean, I would love to have children someday, it's
Mhm.
the one thing that terrifies me the most about like sending, and I'm sure every generation of parents feels this way, but like when you send your kid out into the world, it's like, the world has evolved so much and changed so much, even in the last decade, that like as it relates to technology and mental health, that it's like
Mhm.
you're just sending your kid into like the crossfires. Like you're just like, all right, here you go. Like have a good time. And
Good
it's
luck.
yeah, and it's like, you know, I don't think that any child comes out unscathed, but I do think that like opening up that conversation about being like, okay, you can say, I have anxiety, I have ADHD, whatever, and
Right.
have it be just so universally accepted is such
Mhm.
a like truly mind-blowing concept. And it's things like that, your book and talking to students about it, that makes things like that happen. So, I mean,
Right.
that's amazing.
And I think so many of us who did struggle with our mental health growing up, like what's crazy now is like none of my friends back then, who I'm still friends with today, had any idea what I was going through because
Yeah.
I didn't want them to know.
Yeah.
Like I had to look a certain way to even my friends, which is sad to think about.
Mhm.
But now like that we're adults and we're talking about all these things, it's like, okay, they had anxiety and they had things that they were going through too. We just never talked about those things.
Yeah.
And so it was just refreshing to see like friend groups, students, you know what I mean? Just
Yeah.
talking about this more openly. So
Yeah, totally. That's amazing. So you touched on this too when we talked about your book. So you also mentioned it when we were talking about pageantry as sort of like having this thing to do or take care of
mhm.
wasn't you. So I'm curious to know, now that you are, you've matured from that, and you're removed from those times in your life, what are some ways now that you have learned to maybe care for yourself or pour into yourself a little bit more?
100%. I'm still really bad at it. I like I am just being so honest in this little
I'm
interview.
fucking terrible at it.
I'm terrible. That's why I'm actually having a glass of red wine. No, I'm just kidding. I am doing better at trying to take time for myself,
Mhm.
which is very hard because I feel like I'm always doing things for other people,
Mhm.
and other beings like Leo and Opal. Which is funny. I'm gonna be a terrible like parent because I know those kids are just gonna run me to the ground. But I am doing better at like taking time for myself, whether that be like yoga, breath work, um, manifesting. I love that.
Yeah,
I do still read some self-help books, but like they're
totally.
more spiritual self-help
Yeah.
books.
You never stop.
Um, yeah, and I'm trying so hard to say no to more things.
Mm,
Um,
mhm.
because I feel like I always keep myself so busy to the point I can't focus on my own emotions and things that are important to me. So I'm really trying to say no to things in 2024. That was put on my list and we're doing better at it. But again, work in progress every single day.
Yeah, totally. Oh, I love that. Yeah, I mean, especially as like as women too, and I mean, I can't speak for you, but I imagine as one myself that you might be a people pleaser. And so
Oh, weird. Crazy that you say
yeah, it's
that.
wild actually. So, yeah, it's like it's so hard to say no to everything and so hard to like feel like you're disappointing other people.
Yeah,
Like
you feel like you're letting
and
people down
yeah,
constantly. Yeah.
exactly. And that's just like that was so, I think, burned into our brains, especially with pageants and stuff. It was like you didn't say no because like everything was an opportunity to like
100%.
be, do an appearance or add it to your resume or like what,
Yeah.
do some fundraising or like whatever it may be. So I think that concept is actually really huge and something that like actually is so much harder when put into practice versus like, the concept of it, like it sounds great. Obviously saying no to more things sounds easy, but yeah, the actual concept put into play is actually incredibly difficult. So yeah, I love
It's
that.
weird.
Yeah. So you have mentioned this like twice now, I think, as well. This whole concept of manifesting, like you have a vision board, you like to manifest, you like to do the
Yeah.
spiritual stuff. I love it. I'm right there with you. My literal fucking phone background is my vision board. So
Okay, well, I'm staring at my computer screen, which is also my vision board. So
so I love that for us. So tell me about how like what I find so interesting about like the whole quote manifestation situation is that like a lot of people I talk to about that are also people who are friends of mine who have like who are mentally ill. And so my whole thing is how do you personally distinguish like manifesting from like your mental health? And like, do you believe that there's a way to like, quote, manifest our way into a better place mentally if we're like really
yeah,
down bad?
I think there is two answers to that question. Um, I do believe that positive thinking and manifestation does have a role in your mental health, but at the same time, there are certain chemical imbalances that you cannot treat
Mhm.
with manifesting positive vibes, whatever.
Right.
Um, there was a couple years ago where I was just so low. Like it didn't matter what I did, truthfully. I was just at a point where like I did not really want to wake up.
Mhm.
um, it was just a depressing winter, I think, really, truthfully. I think it was like COVID. We just had so much going on in our society, which really took an impact on my mental health.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter how my dad, I call him the grasshopper of our family. He's just very positive. Like
Yeah.
nothing is wrong in the world. Like you woke up today, it's the best day ever. And I love that about him. Um, but I do think it's you can only do so much
Yeah.
until you need to go and you need to talk to somebody or you need to get on medication or you know what I mean. So I think there's two sides to that coin.
Yeah.
I think manifesting is super powerful. I do believe that you can accomplish a lot of those things. Accomplish, I hate that word when I'm talking about manifesting because it's like you put it out there and you're like, oh, I hope I succeed. I
Yeah.
hope I get that, hope I get that $1 billion home. Um, so it's like, gosh, I'm hand in hand on that. I think yes, positive thinking, good affirmations every single day. It does wonders, but at the same time, it can only do so much until
Yeah.
you do actually need to seek help.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I think that's like the line that a lot of like manifestation gurus or like the people you see on Instagram who like are manifestation coaches or whatever, like
Mhm.
I think that that's a line that they have to walk all the time. Like it must be really challenging for them, I can imagine. But I'm also a firm believer in that. I think there's basically two I think they're two separate categories essentially. Like I totally understand that like, yes, affirmations important, positive thinking important. And also, I'm like, well, if I'm like OCD about something and I don't mean that in like a flippant term, like I have
Yeah.
very OCD tendencies that like if I'm obsessive compulsive and I keep having this thought,
Mhm.
it's like over and over, I can't manifest
Yeah.
my way out of a thought pattern. Like that's
Yeah.
like, so I
100%.
think that's a really fine line that like a lot of coaches or gurus or like whatever have to walk when they're talking about like manifestation and sort of that intersection of mental health and manifestation. So, yeah.
Absolutely.
uh, yeah. So, okay, you mentioned Dave, so that's a great segue. So
My little grasshopper.
one thing that we love Dave. One thing that I think I asked Allie this when I had her on the podcast, but I'm curious to know your side of it. And I think, please feel free to go as in depth or not in depth as you want on this.
I'm scared.
Bearing
What
in
are you
mind
gonna
that,
ask me?
this is public information.
I have
Um,
anxiety now, Maggie.
so, so I no, you're totally fine. I asked Allie something like to the effect of like, did you ever feel like there was this pressure because you are from a very well-known family in the Quad City area. Did you ever feel like there was this pressure to sort of like, aside from the pageantry and baton twirling and like all of that, put that to the side. Did you ever
Mhm.
feel like just because of your last name, there was like this pressure put upon you to like act or be a certain way or do a specific thing, or did you not really feel that as much?
I think growing up, it was hard on me. I think when you have that last name, sometimes people give you certain stereotypes,
Mm,
right? So I think it was hard for me to make friends growing up. Um, and it was kind of constant struggle that I had to deal with to kind of try and prove otherwise, I think,
mm.
to a lot of my peers, which is funny because the second they got to know me, it was like complete opposite to what they had formed in their mindset. Um, I never really felt like because of that name though that I had to like be something
Mhm.
or that I had a lot of pressure attached to me. I do think growing up, I tried to distance myself from the family business, which is hilarious now, like looking at it. But it was like, no, like I don't want anything to do with that place because of just what I had to deal with. And it was, I mean, I went to school for broadcasting, digital media. I fully wanted to be an anchor from like the age of 14 till the time I graduated college and then got into it and was like, yeah, no, this
Yeah.
is not for me. Um, and thank gosh I got out of it when I did. Um, but it kind of took like a couple years of really discovering who I was again.
Yeah.
And I realized that I kind of always pushed myself away from something that I probably would have really have loved to do, which was the jewelry business and the jewelry industry. I mean, I had worked at Necker's, Windexing, cleaning my dad's really messy office, by the way. He's not a clean individual at work. He likes to collect things. So it's like a little museum in there. So I'd always been in and out of the store and I loved it and I loved being there. But of course, due to other people's perceptions and stereotypes, like I just didn't want anything to do with it.
Yeah.
And in fact, I thought that when I got married, it was like the perfect way to kind of like hide from that, which is like so sad also looking back on. Um, but then I was like, you know what? Like, screw it. Like, screw it. People think like we're going to live life for me. We're going to do the things that I love. I've always loved jewelry. I'm a huge nerd. Science is like my thing. So I'm going to school at GIA, the Gemology Institute of America, which is also where my dad went, which is kind of fun following in his footsteps. And Allie also goes there. I'm sure she
Yeah.
mentioned that. Um, and I'm just loving every single minute of it. I think too, the really cool thing over the last few years that I've gotten to do is really delve into like the history of Neckers from like the very beginning
Yeah.
and my grandfather and like everything he went through to building Neckers and DeWitt. And then from what my dad and my uncle went through. And it's like you have this whole new appreciation for the family business and from what it started to what it is today. Um, and like it makes my heart full thinking about it. But yeah, I mean, growing up, it was difficult, you know, but I have this whole newfound appreciation and love for my last name, which I never thought I would feel again,
Yeah.
truthfully. So,
Totally. Yeah. It's funny how like we, because of other people's perceptions, really shy away from the things that like either A, we're passionate about, or B, we're good at, or
mhm.
C, a combination of the two. So yeah, I love hearing that you sort of are like, yeah, fuck that. Like I'm just gonna do what I want to do, and I
Yeah,
think that is the undoing, right? Like that is the sort of unbecoming of self, is like shedding the layer of fucks you give
yeah,
about,
100.
what other people think and what they, and opinions that just don't, at the end of the day, don't matter. So I love that.
Mhm.
Amazing. So tell me a little bit about too, like you said, you just stepped into a new role at Neckers. Talk about what you're doing now with Neckers
Yeah.
and so like, are you set to take over this ship? What's the deal? Like,
Fingers
walk
crossed.
me
I have
through,
no idea.
walk me through that.
I mean, like one can only hope
Sure.
that then her kids continue to take Neckers into the future. that's kind of my goal, is to keep my grandfather's legacy alive. I just think it's an amazing company with so much history, so much love. We have amazing employees, and just like an amazing story. Like, I think once you hear about the story and just like what it took
Yeah.
for my grandfather to even bankroll the store, it's super neat. So I hope to be a part of Neckers for a very, very long time. I think it would be amazing to keep this going generationally, far into the future. Pray my kids may want it one day. Who knows? Also not going to pressure them though. It's fine.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, my roles have kind of changed throughout the years. I kind of call myself this little hybrid. Or cat in the hat, because I think with a family business, you just have like a million roles thrown at you constantly. Like, you never just have one thing that you're doing, which is also amazing. And it's growth. That was the growth part that my dad continues to
Yeah.
tell me. Every day is about growth, Sav. Um, but I started off doing just social media. That was something that I was really passionate about. Well, I was also operating my own little clothing boutique, Saints, at the time. And then decided that I wanted to start working part time on the sales floor again, and really enjoyed that. And then this past year, I've just delved more into building our online website. So now you can shop all of our jewelry online, which is kind of cool. And now I am taking over marketing, which is very exciting, but it's been very overwhelming at the same time. So I'm like,
Totally.
it's been a crazy past like 2.5 weeks.
Yeah.
Um, but I'm very, very excited for it.
Yeah.
Um, I think it'll be a very fun venture for me. I love being creative. I love designing things. And again, like, I have a huge passion for the company and just the history. And so my goal is to really bring that to light. My dad and uncle have done a very good job at growing the business into what it is today. It's top 1% of independent jewelers in the nation, which is incredible.
Wow.
And I just want to continue to grow that.
Yeah.
I want to take it from the Quad Cities to the Midwest, and then hopefully all over the place. So,
Yeah. Amazing. That's so dope. I love it. So fucking cool. Yeah, I actually had no idea about like the real, history of Neckers until the influencer night. Like when I went,
hmm
dad spoke about it. Like that was so neat to hear about, especially like the DeWitt store too. I think really holds sort of like a special place, I'm sure obviously for you because
right.
we're both from there, and it's, your family. But like I always just loved like thinking about like being a kid and going into Neckers, like, during like Autumn Fest or like things like that. It's like things like that make me so happy that there is a place in my hometown, which I used to really like, DeWitt for sure has its pros and cons. And I, for the longest time, like post grad, I think I was sort of like, fuck that place. I want nothing to do with that
100%.
place.
That's the normal mentality of it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And then you like, I don't know, you sort of, I think you grow and you learn and you're sort of like, okay, like there are some things about this place that are really, kind of charming and like, and it made me
Right.
who I am. And, my entire family was raised here. And, so I think
Mhm.
it's really neat to have such an amazing piece of history and like such a well-established business that literally is based, into it. I think that's so cool. So I love that.
Thank you.
Um, okay, you're like, thank you. I'm growing it.
Thank you.
Amazing. So, okay, there's this section of the show that we're gonna get into now.
Oh God, I'm
And
nervous.
this is called World War or World Peace. I actually
Okay.
fully fucking forgot about this section the last like two people I interviewed. So full disclosure. Um I had a friend who listened to like one of my latest episodes and was like, "Where's the World War World Peace section?" And I was like, "Oh fuck, I totally forgot. I've been like shitting the bed on the second season." So anyway, so basically it's where I just tell you about a topic or I list a topic and you tell me if you think it's like world war or world peace. So if you like it, if you hate it, all the things.
I'm
You
nervous.
can
Is
be
this like
Swedish.
celebrity news or what?
You can be
I'm not
Swedish
good with
on a
that.
couple. No, you'll be fine. Okay, so I want to know your thoughts and feelings on the Miss USA pageant and what it has developed into today. Is it world war? Is it world peace? Do we love her? Do we hate her?
Oh. I don't know how I feel. I'm both. Can I be both? I'm like constantly playing devil's advocate. I think it's kind of taking a little bit of like the Miss America roots into the Miss USA, right?
For sure. For
So
sure.
I do kind of like that. Oh gosh. I just saw that they took over Miss USA, or actually maybe it was Miss Universe's Instagram. So they're kind of controlling that for her. Not a fan of that. Did you
Wait,
see that?
what?
Yeah. So I think it's like the actual organization is like running her Instagram account. She doesn't have access to it anymore. I think
That's
it's Miss
so,
Universe. Don't quote me.
that
Don't
is
quote me on
so
that, but I saw
bizarre.
that pop up
No
on my
quotes were
Instagram
made.
feed. So that I'm not a fan of. Oh gosh, Maggie, I'm so out of touch with pageant. I'm
That is
so
the
bad.
unanimous, like, I
I
literally had Mallory Hagan on and she was like, I am just sort of like there were different aspects of Miss America I was asking about. And she's like, I'm just kind of like neutral on all of these because I'm like so far removed. And I'm like,
That's
same,
how I feel.
same. Like,
I haven't watched, honestly, I don't think I've watched Miss America or Miss USA for like 3 or 4 years.
yeah, yeah,
I mean, like I have been so far out of touch. It feels like a different world. It
yeah,
really does.
it
Like
really
you're in
does.
it or you're not in it. And if you're not in it, like you're kind of clueless,
You don't
which is kind
understand. Yeah,
of other than what I see on my Instagram feed,
yeah.
which is like a little nerve-wracking that I'm like paying attention. But
I just did a mock interview the other day for some of the Miss Illinois contestants. And one of the people that was on the panel with me mentioned that something about like the community service initiative or like the phrasing of, oh, it's how Miss America organization, MAO, is now like Miss America opportunity instead of organization. And I'm like, oh,
I
weird
had no
flex,
idea.
but okay. And yeah, same, had no clue. And she mentioned that, and I was like, what the fuck? Like, I'm just like, I'm so fucking
They're
removed.
constantly changing. It's like
Yeah.
every there's something new. Um, I'm just so far removed. I don't even know. I don't know if
Yeah.
I'd say world
Yeah.
peace or not. I
Okay.
mean, I would still probably watch it if I was like chilling on my couch that night
For
and,
sure, for sure. Yeah, totally.
but
I like watched it for shits and giggles like 2 years ago, Miss America. And it was like so, or no, did I watch it this last year? I think I watched it this last year. And it was so far off from like what I remember Miss America being that I was like, I don't know like what to do with this. Like I don't know how to feel about this because it's
right.
so different from all of the shit that
What we
I
grew up
that
with.
I
Yeah.
was doing. Yeah. So
Yeah.
you can be neutral, you can be Sweden.
Perfect.
Um,
That'd be-
would
I'm
love to
very happy
know.
to all of
Yeah,
I am so far removed from anything other
same,
than work, dogs, and hockey. It's a
same.
problem.
Not hockey, but same. Okay, would love to know World Peace on like big box. I have a feeling I know what you're gonna say about this, but like big box jewelers. Like, okay, so if I'm like,
Yeah.
cruising along I'll take this one. I'm gonna refer to this one as a big box jeweler, which I don't know if I'm right or wrong on this,
Okay.
but like say Tiffany's. Is that like a big box jeweler?
Yeah.
I
I
would
mean,
assume it
there's
is,
definitely,
right?
yeah.
Okay,
Like
so like
the Nike.
yeah, okay,
of
cool. So
her
like
shoes,
I
you know?
think of like big box jewelers like K Jewelers,
Right.
yeah, Tiffany, Harry Winston, like whatever, all these like big brands, big names.
Mhm.
World Peace on that. And then I want to ask you a follow-up question.
Okay. Well, obviously, I'm going to say World War.
Okay,
No, I'm just kidding.
so
But I do think that there's like amazing things that come from that,
for
obviously.
sure,
So,
for
okay,
sure.
go ahead
Yeah,
and ask
yeah.
a follow-up
Okay, so
question.
my follow-up to that is because I was assuming I knew what you were gonna say. So my follow-up is like, are there practices like inherently ethical as it relates to like getting diamonds and
Yes.
such? Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So we all have to follow the same standard. So the Kimberley process
Oh,
was actually enacted in the 90s. So there are like no conflict diamonds on the market anymore. So at
oh,
least as a consumer, you can feel comfortable about that, regardless of where you shop. However, I do hope that you would shop at Necker's Jewelers, which you have.
gang, gang.
So just a little flex there for Maggie. But No, I mean,
Very happy
I'll say
customer.
World War, but obviously anybody who's in the jewelry industry, I have mad respect for. I will always tell you to shop local. So wherever you're from and you're listening to this, I would love to have you as a Neckers Jewelers client. But if not, shop local because those are the people that are really impacting your community. The sales staff will sit down with you. They'll explain everything, answer every single question, give you so much knowledge that you would have never have had by going online and shopping other retailers. I won't say their names. And probably being so brutally honest with you. But you'll leave so much more confident in the process of buying diamonds and buying jewelry and knowing that what you're getting is 100% accurate.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I feel like especially with like really like heirloom pieces of jewelry, like,
Mhm.
engagement rings, wedding bands, like stuff like that. Obviously, like, people have other collections or other pieces in their collection that far, exceed that. But like, I remember when we came to Necker's, like for like Ty's wedding band as an
Mhm.
example, like half of that was his dad's wedding
Yeah,
band that like we needed soldered into like a different wedding band. And it's like stuff like that. It's like, I mean, there was never a question we were going to take it anywhere else. Like, we're like, absolutely not.
right.
Like, we would not trust any other people with this thing. Like, can you imagine just rolling into like a K
Yes.
jewelers being like, hey, can you take this
Here's a
incredibly
potential.
important piece?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like,
Good luck. Hope to see you. No,
yeah.
yeah.
And they take it and they're like, by the way, we fucked it up. And it's like
It's
in a
actually a wholly
factory.
you have no idea if that's actually
Yeah,
yours.
exactly, exactly. Okay, cool. Love that. Last one I have for you, and I know you said you're so removed, but like, I don't know if
Totally.
you remember this. Do you remember Voy forums? They were like
No.
those online. Okay, never mind. Oh my God, they were
I
like
remember some
on.
type of like blackboard type thing where people would go and talk about
That's it.
contestants.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's it. It's
Okay.
called Voy forums. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay,
Okay.
so did you ever get on Voy forums when you were competing?
I think I saw like a couple things about me that somebody had screenshot and sent.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
I don't think they were bad, so I was like, whatever, like fine. Like, cool, you think I'm
You
gonna
were
win this
such
year?
a
I
better person
probably
than I am.
won't, but
I
I probably won't,
literally
but thanks for the optimism.
I think it was not my last year competing, but I think in 20, I'm trying to remember the year, 2017 maybe. I was hitting up Voy forums like every fucking day. Like I was just like, because I just was like, listen, it was like the Reddit for like pageantry. So I was like,
Oh,
what's
yeah.
going down? Like who's winning? Who's like
Who's
who's
who? What's yeah.
yeah. Yeah, I loved Voy forums. Okay, cute. Well, that's amazing.
Okay, well, I would say World War on that one.
Because it's like
He's
severely
saying world
damaging to
peace,
your mental
but I'm
health.
saying World War. Um, I
That's
try to stay
so
away from
bad.
that unless it was sent to me.
For sure, for sure. Yeah, unless I saw something like really fucking good where somebody was like, Maggie's gonna win Miss Iowa, I'd be like, oh, okay. Thanks, Queen.
Yeah, that was me. I'm like, yay, it's gonna happen this year. And then it's like, psych,
Yeah.
pull the rug.
You're like, nope, no fucking thanks. Um,
Next year.
Amazing. Yeah. I love it so much. Okay, Savannah. Last question for you,
Okay.
and then we'll wrap. Um, is there a quote that you try to live your life by?
The irony of this quote. I have always done do something that your future self will thank you for.
I
Ever
love
since
that.
I was I think it's just I've always been super goal oriented. So it's like trying to always constantly do positive things that will either excel me in life.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, I mean it's a double-edged sword for sure when we're talking about like just growth and everything. It's like there's my perfectionism coming right back out.
Right,
But
totally.
I do think like that quote kept me out of a lot of trouble. I was always different a little bit growing up, so I never like went to parties or anything. I probably should have. I was kind of a nerd, but that little quote always stuck in the back of my head.
Yeah,
So,
totally. I love
and
it.
still to this day, I do live by that. So,
Amazing. I love it. So dope. Oh, thank you so much, Savannah, for taking the time and for sitting down with me.
yeah.
Before you go though, tell everybody where they can follow you, where they can find you, plug Neckers, do all the shit. Now it's time to tell us where to find you.
All right, you can find me on Instagram at Vanna Neck. I haven't changed that yet. I probably won't. I just
I
feel like
would,
that's kind of like a little trademark.
yeah.
And then Necker Jewelers, you can find us in DeWitt or Davenport, Iowa. We also have a website, neckersjewelers.com. All of our information's on there.
Amazing. Awesome. Thanks so much for joining me, Savannah.
Yeah, thank you.